The space station floated in deep space, cold and silent, with lights flickering across long metal halls. Every alien guard knew one rule: never go near Cell 9. Cell 9 was not just a room, it was a cage holding something not meant to exist. Inside the cage stood a girl taller than any alien soldier, her skin golden, her eyes glowing like stars. Her body looked like it was made from fire trapped under smooth, shining skin. They said she could break steel with one hand, and burn through walls with a breath, but she never moved, never spoke, never blinked. She just stood there like a statue, like a warning to all who passed. They called her Rixa, but only in whispers, like saying her name too loud would wake her. No alien dared look into her eyes, not even the bravest of the commanders. They believed if she ever got free, the whole station would fall in 1 hour, so the cameras watched her. Always the guards stayed far away. Always the locks stayed shut, always. But then came the human. His name was Eli. He was not a soldier, not a leader, just a maintenance worker from Earth. He was fixing power lines in the hallway. When he saw the glass wall of Cell 9, he saw her standing inside, silent, still alone. And he did something no one had done before. He smiled, one short human smile, like sunshine in winter, and something happened. Drixa moved not much, just a tilt of the head, just a blink of her golden eyes. But the cameras caught it, the sensors blinked red. The system glitched for 2 seconds. That was all it took for panic to spread. Security rushed in, pulled Eli back, shouted questions. Did he touch the wall? Did she speak to him? Did he feel heat, or hear a voice? He said no, he just smiled. They warned him never to go near again. They told him she was dangerous. She was not a person, she was a weapon, she was a thing created for war. But Eli saw something different in her eyes, not rage, not fire, but silence. A deep silence, like someone who had waited too long for anyone to care. That night Eli walked past her cage. Again, he was not supposed to, but he did, and Rixa was still watching him. She moved closer to the glass, not fast, not loud. She raised her hand and placed it on the glass. Her palm was glowing, but not hot. Eli placed his hand on the other side. Their hands did not touch, but something inside did. Cameras blinked again. The lights above flickered. Power in the east wing dropped for 3 seconds. Engineers blamed a glitch, but the guards knew better. The alien girl who never moved was moving, and it all started with a human smile. Next morning, the base commander ordered full lockdown on Cell 9. No one was to speak to her, no one was to approach, but Rixa did not go still again. Now she moved every time Eli passed. Even when he was far, she turned her head to follow him. Even when he said nothing, her eyes searched his. Some called it madness, some called it bonding. The science team said her power was tied to emotion. And now she had felt something new. Other aliens feared her more now, not because she might explode, but because she might connect. She might become something beyond control, beyond fear. And the human, he just smiled again. Because he was brave. Not because he wanted fame, but because, in her eyes, he saw someone who had never been seen as a person before. He did not see a monster, he saw a girl in a cage. A giant, yes, powerful, yes, dangerous, yes, but lonely, to so very lonely. And from that moment the story changed. It was no longer about a weapon locked in a cage. It was about a girl who opened her eyes, because a human dared to smile. Asterisk. The next morning the entire station buzzed with whispers and warning lights. Something had changed inside Cell 9, something no sensor could explain. Rixa stood at the center of her cage, her eyes locked on the hallway where the human would soon walk. And the air around her shimmered like heat rising from desert ground. Eli entered the hall, pushing his cart with tools, humming a simple Earth song. He did not know the cameras were already watching every move he made. He did not know that officers were standing behind dark glass rooms, writing notes on him. All he knew was that she was waiting. He looked at her through the thick glass, her glowing eyes staring straight into his, and again he smiled. This time, Rixa stepped forward slowly. The lights above flickered, the sensors made a soft beep, then stopped. She raised her hand again to the glass, and for the first time she opened her mouth. Sound came out, but her lips moved one word: safe. Eli froze, not because he was afraid, but because the word hit him like a soft knock on a locked door. He raised his hand in return, and slowly mouthed the same word back. Safened. That second something broke inside her cage, not the glass, not the walls, something deeper. The station's energy sensors spiked. Lights dimmed across Sector BAI control, rerouted emergency systems. No one understood what had happened, but deep inside everyone felt it. Was waking up. Commander Raxa slammed his clawed fist on the desk. He shouted orders: full scan of Cell 9, double the guard. And keep that human away. But the damage was done late. That night, Rixa sat alone in the cage, her golden hair glowing softly in the dark, and she did something strange, something impossible. She reached down to the floor and began to draw with it. Her fingers she traced circles and lines glowing with soft light. It was a symbol from an old language, a symbol the aliens did not recognize, but when Eli sneaked into the observation room and saw it, he whispered the word before he even knew why talk. He looked back at her, and she nodded slowly. She wanted to talk. She wanted to be heard, not as a weapon, not as a test subject, but as someone real. The next day, Eli came back. He brought an old marker and pressed it against the glass. He wrote slowly in English, "Who are you?" Rixa stared, then raised her finger and wrote a single word on the glass with her glowing touch. Made not born, not named. Made. Eli felt a cold shiver run down his spine. She was created, built for something, maybe war, maybe destruction, but now she was trying to be more grand. It all began with a smile. The guards pulled Eli away again, yelled at him, threatened him, but every time he was dragged out, Rixa's eyes followed him, not with rage but with a kind of silent waiting. Like she knew he would come back, and he did again, and again. Each time they spoke a little more. Through glass, through marks, through glance. The more they shared, the weaker the cage became. Not the walls, not the glass, but the fear that held her. The fear that controlled her. It began to crack one night, while Eli slept in the supply room. The emergency alarm blared for 6 seconds, then went silent. When guards ran to cell 9, they found Rixa sitting in the middle of the room. Around her were new glowing marks on the floor. Not words, but pictures. One showed a starship breaking, one showed fire, one showed her alone, then one small figure standing before her, smiling, a human. The commander stared at the pictures and growled. She was dreaming. She was remembering, and worse, she was feeling. That night, a secret meeting was called. Alien leaders spoke in low voices. Some said she must be ended before it was too late. Some said she was learning too fast, but one voice said something new. What if the human was the key? What if her power needed a connection? What if the smile was not the danger, but the answer? Outside the meeting, Eli stood in the hallway looking through the glass again. Rixa stood. She raised her hand one more time. He placed his hand on the glass, and for the first time, her glowing hand matched his shape exactly. The lights in cell 9 dimmed again, but this time it was not a glitch. This time the change came from her. Rixa stood near the wall, her body glowing brighter than before, her eyes burning soft golden light, but they were not eyes full of rage. They were eyes filled with something new. They were watching. They were waiting. She looked toward the hallway where Eli would soon walk again. Her fingers moved in circles on the wall, not random, not wild. She was writing again, not symbols this time, but letters, English letters. One word slowly appeared, glowing on the wall. Help. Eli walked in with a datapad in his hand, pretending to check wires, but his eyes were already locked on hers. When he saw the word, he stopped breathing for a second. Then he moved closer. He raised his marker and wrote back. How. Rixa stepped forward. She touched the glass, and a new glow spread across the wall. This time a shape appeared, a door, a cage, a small dot inside. She pointed to the dot, then to herself, and then she looked directly at Eli, her eyes wide, not powerful, not burning, but scared. Eli understood she was the dot. She was the prisoner, and she did not want to stay in the cage anymore. Behind him, the cameras blinked red. Security bots moved slowly into position, but Eli kept watching her because in her eyes he saw something. Maria memory not. His Hersid hit him like a dream made of light. He saw flashes, she running through a fire field, she surrounded by voices shouting in languages he did not know, she placed in a glowing chamber, her body changing. Her screams, silent hand. Then nothing, darkness until a smile. His smile. He stepped back. The glass was still there, the cage still sealed, but her memory had touched him. How could she show him that? He blinked, touched his head. It was not a voice. It was not a picture. It was her ice. Rixa could speak through her eyes, not words, but visions, feelings, truth. And now he knew she was not just made, she was broken, built for battle, trained to destroy, then locked away when she refused to kill. Not a monster, not a weapon, a soul. In panged the doors. Behind Eli slammed open, guards rushed in, blasters raised. Orders shouted back, away, move now, stand down, but Eli stayed frozen. Rixa stayed calm, no power surge, no explosions, only silence. One guard moved close to Eli, grabbed his arm, pulled him back. As he was dragged away, he turned his head. Rixa pressed her hand to the glass again, and for the first time a tear ran down her glowing cheek. It shimmered like starlight, and it meant more than 1,000 words. In the control room, Commander Raxa watched the footage in silence. He turned to his science officer. The human is triggering her memories. He is reaching something inside her. She was never supposed to feel. She was never supposed to cry. The officer asked, should we erase him from her memory? Shut him out before she bonds too deeply? But another voice spoke, a voice from the shadows. High Council, let them continue. We want to see how far she can feel. We want to see what happens next. Back in his bunk, Eli stared at the ceiling. He could still see her eyes in his mind. Still feel that tear, still hear that silent word. Hilm knew he had a choice. He could walk away like the others, ignore the cage, ignore the fear, ignore the girl, or he could go back, keep talking, keep drawing, keep feeling, because inside that giant glowing alien form was someone who did not want to destroy, she just wanted to be seen. He sat up, pulled on his boots, picked up the marker and walked toward cell 9 again. The order was given in silence, not through shouting, not through alarms. It came on a black data chip, marked with red stripes, carried by a silent drone, delivered straight to Commander Raxer's desk inside. The message, only 6 words: terminate subject. Rixa tonight, no Deletha. Commander stared at the screen, his claws tightening around the armrest. He did not argue, he did not ask why. The council had spoken, and their voice was at the same time. In another corner of the station, Eli sat beside a vent, scribbling shapes on a piece of scrap metal: circles, lines, arrows, escape paths, hidden exits, backup plans. He was not a soldier, he was not a hacker, but he had been watching, and he had been listening. Past week he heard things. He saw how guards avoided her room. He saw how scientists whispered in fear. He saw how Rix's presence made everything feel like a bomb waiting to go off. But he also saw her smile once, only once, and it was enough. So he made a choice that night, as the red moons passed behind the station, and shadows grew long in the halls. 3 armed guards entered the lower wing where Cell 9 waited. They wore black visors and carried sonic rifles. No warning, no talking, just Missionelli was already there, hiding near the pipes, his heart beating faster than the blinking lights above. He knew what was about to happen. He heard the plan from a loose talking officer in the canteen. Quick in, quick out, target gone by midnight. He could not let it happen inside the cage. Rixa was standing still, but her eyes were different, not glowing, not sharp. They were calm, too calm, like she knew, like she had accepted her end. The guards took position. 1 aimed for the center of her chest, another locked on her head. The third activated the sonic pulse. Eli jumped out before they fired. He waved his arms and shouted, "Stop, she's not a threat, she's alive, she's feeling, she's trying to change." The guards yelled at him to get back. 1 fired the sonic burst, but Rixa moved faster than sounding. 1 step, she slammed her hand against the glass. The entire hallway shook like thunder. The sonic wave bounced back and cracked the ceiling. The lights shattered, the floor split open, just a little, but no one died. Because she stopped herself, she could have broken through. She could have killed all 3. She could have ended Eli too, but she didn't. She looked at him with glowing tears in her eyes and whispered through the glass, 1 word: go. Eli shook his head. He ran to the panel, tried every override code he knew, tried every hack he could remember, but the cage stayed locked, sealed by command codes far beyond his level. The guards retreated, bleeding from ears, shouting for backup. Alarms started blaring across the station. Lai knew this was the end, and lest he did something more here, and not to escape, but to find the one person who might help a friend in the lower docks, a smuggler, a drunk. But once a data tech in the science wing, her name was Jaya. She owed Eli a favor. When he burst into her room, panting and wild, she raised her blaster. He told her everything. She did not believe it all, but she saw the fire in his eyes, and she gave him what he needed. A backdoor code, old, risky, elite, maybe just enough. Back in cell 9, Rixa sat again in the dark. No guards now, only red lights spinning on the walls. She raised her hand and wrote 1 last word on the glass: trust, and she waited. The power went out at exactly 0300 station time. Not a flicker, not a warning, not a delay. 1 second the lights were there. The next second, darkness swallowed everything. Sirens did not scream, security systems did not flash, because this was not an accident. This was a plan. Eli stood in the cold tunnel, holding a stolen access tablet with shaking fingers. The code Jaya gave him had worked. Old D-player command line, buried under years of system updates. But now the cameras were blind, the turrets were frozen, the cage was open. He did not run toward the exit. He ran toward cell 9. The hallway was silent, like the breath before a storm. His boots echoed through the metal floor. In the dark, the emergency lights glowed soft red like blood veins. Running through a sleeping beast, he reached the glass. It was cracked, not broken, just enough to show something powerful had touched it. Rixa stood on the other side, not glowing, not angry, just waiting. She looked at him and tilted her head as if asking. Now he nodded, pressed the tablet to the side panel, typed the last command. The lock hissed once. The air shifted, and for the first time since she was caged, the door slid open. No sound, no alarm. Just space. Rixa stepped forward, not fast, not loud, and Eli stepped back, not in fear but in awe. She was taller than he remembered, stronger, more real, but her eyes held only one thing: come. They ran together through the dark halls, not many corridors, just one path Eli had mapped. Through the waste tunnels, through the old cargo shaft, past the abandoned engine. Core guards were confused, some shouted, some aimed, but none fired because when they saw her, they froze not from fear, but from something else, like their instincts screamed danger, but their hearts whispered peace. One young alien officer tried to stop them. Rixa walked up to him, placed her hand on his shoulder, looked into his eyes. He lowered his weapon, and let them pass. Eli stared. What did she show him? What did he feel? No time to ask. They had to move in. Dock 6. Jaya was already waiting near a small freighter, old, rusty, fast. Good enough. She handed Eli the keys, said nothing, just looked at Rixa, and shook her head with a half-smile. "You are crazy." Her eyes said, but maybe crazy is what they need. They boarded the ship. Rixa sat near the window, looking out at the stars. Her fingers traced patterns on the glass, like she was remembering things from a time before cages. Eli started the engines. The ship roared, awakened. That was the moment. The council responded from above the station. 3 ships appeared, dark, massive, silent, each one holding enough firepower to turn their ship into dust. Into dust. A voice came through the cold sharp, commanding surrender. The subject will be destroyed. Eli looked at Rixa. She looked at the stars, and then she looked at him. One small no dealer smiled and hit the launch button. The freighter jumped into motion, dodged the first blast, spun between laser lines. Rixa raised her hand, not to attack, but to guide. The energy around the ship bent slightly. The sensors blinked, and somehow they passed through. They broke the line. They escaped. Oh, one understood how the logs showed nothing. The scans showed nothing, but deep inside the system, a single unreadable code shimmered for 1 second before fading forever. And far beyond the station, inside the ship, Rixa closed her eyes. She was free, not just from the cage, but from what they made her. And Eli, he just leaned back in the chair, smiled at her again, and whispered, "Now, what?" The stars ahead looked calm, but death was chasing fast from behind. 2 fleets moved through the black void, like sharp claws reaching for a whisper. One fleet carried the council's flag, cold, clean, deadly. The other carried no colors, only dark ships, made from stolen tech and broken laws. Both wanted Rixa, but for different reasons. Lily watched the radar screen, blinking red lines getting closer. He checked the ship's engines, old, slow, overheating. They had minutes, maybe less. Rixa sat in the back, near the window, her eyes closed, her breath slow. She was not afraid, but she was not calm either. Inside her, something burned, not rage, not power, but fear. Not for herself, but for Elish. She had seen too many futures in her sleep. In one, she saw fire take him. In another, she saw him leave her. And in the worst one, she saw him smile one last time, then never again. Lee turned around and looked at her. "We need a place to hide somewhere. No scanner can find." Rixa stood, walked to the console. Her hand glowed and touched the screen. A map appeared, old, faded, unknown to most ships. She pointed to a small moon, hidden in gas clouds far from the main lanes. Eli stared. "That place is not on any chart." She nodded. "So." They jumped a freighter, groaned, time twisted, space bent, and they vanished from the fleet's radar. For now the moon was dead. No cities, no towers, only wind, ice, and silence. They landed near a cave, dark and deep, safe. And now Eli started working on repairs. Rixa walked through the cave slowly, her hand tracing the old stone. Then she sat and began to hum a soft tune. Not human, not alien, something in between. Lee listened. From the ship, his chest felt tight, not with pain, but with something he could not name. He walked to her, sat beside her, and asked the question burning in his heart. "Why?" Rixa opened her eyes, looked at him for a long time. Then she reached out, touched his head, and showed him not words, not pictures, but feeling. She showed him her first moment after waking in the lab. She showed the faces that feared her, the voices that called her beast, the orders that turned her into a tool. And then she showed the day she saw him smile. The first light that touched her in darkness, the first soul that saw her not as danger, but as someone. Eli felt his throat tighten. He grabbed her hand and held it tight. Outside the moon's sky shifted. A ship passed above. A scout. Looking, Rixa turned her head and closed her eyes again. She focused down the ship above, blinked once on the radar, then disappeared, vanished. Stared at her. "You hid us." She nodded, but her breath was weak. She fell to one knee, power fading too much. Strainily helped her back to the ship, laid her down, covered her in the warmest blanket he could find. He watched her sleep, her skin glowing soft, her face peaceful. And he whispered, "You are not a weapon, you are hope." But in space, hope is hunted too far behind them. The council ships changed course. The dark fleet stayed close. Both knew the direction. Now they would not stop, not until Rixa was caged again, or gone forever. And Eli would not run forever. He looked at the map, he looked at her, and he knew. The time to hide was ending. The time to stand was near. The moon shook under their feet. Dust fell from the cave roof like soft warning. Something was coming. Not one ship, not one fleet, but both. The Council's warships formed a ring above the sky, black metal like knives waiting to fall. The dark rogue fleet hovered behind them, shadows armed with greed and fear. They had found her, and this time they came with only one goal: take Rixa, dead or alive. Lee stood at the edge of the cave, eyes locked on the glowing sky. He had no weapons, no army, no backup, only a ship low on fuel, and a girl who once could burn a planet, but now barely stood. Walked to him, her steps slow, her glow dim, but her eyes still clear. Still watching him, he said nothing, only held her hand. She squeezed it once, and stepped forward into the open. The moment she did, every scanner lit up, every cannon, locked every ship, sent warning: surrender now, or be erased. She raised her arms, not in rage, not to fight, but in peace. Her glow spread across the ground like warm morning light, not blinding, soft. The commanders watched, confused. She was not attacking, she was not running, she was waiting. A whisper moved through the enemy ranks. Why does she not strike? What is she doing then? She spoke not with words, with feeling. Every pilot, every officer, every sensor tech felt it at once, a memory of fear, of pain, of being called weapon, being used, being feared. Then a moment, a smile, a human hand, a new Patpalai stepped forward and stood beside her. His presence reached out like a bridge between her and the world, between rage and reason. The fleets hesitated, some pulled back, some lowered their aim, but one ship from the dark fleet fired a single shot, fast, loud, final. Lie moved without thinking. He pulled Rixa behind him, closed his eyes, but the shot never hit it. Froze midair, turned to light, then faded. Rixa stood tall, now glowing brighter than ever. Not fire, not heat, just light. She looked up at the sky and sent one silent message to all ships: I choose peace, because someone chose me. The council ships turned. One by one they powered down weapons, they pulled back. Even the dark ships hesitated. Then they too left all but one. The same ship that fired it stayed. A single pod dropped. A soldier stepped out, rifle in hand. Rixa faced him, no fear, no shield, just eyes open. The soldier raised the rifle, then lowered eyes, looked at her, then at Elith, then turned and walked away. The pod rose and was gone. Silence returned to the moon, real silence, safe silence. Eli turned to her. She smiled, not just with lips, but with her whole self. The glow around her faded to soft gold, and she stepped closer. No more hiding, no more running. They stood together, alone, alive, free. In that moment, she was not a threat, not a secret, not a cad. She was Rixa, and he was the one who chose to see her as more. The stars above them were quiet, the warships gone, the story changed, and far away on 100 alien worlds, others began to ask, if a human could see peace in her, why couldn't we?